Talking millions of dollars.
Is it a good place to make fast money?
If you're into real estate, yes, you can make money fast.
This is Carlos Rosso.
As president of the condo division for Florida's leading developer, he was the driving force behind 16,000 units, creating iconic projects that earned him global recognition.
By the way, in business, you have to be able to take that risk. That's
Comfortable, right?
And again, not be afraid.
Carlos, if you were to think one thing that you will want the audience to hear, what was the best tip you can give them?
Never give up for the things that you really want.
Even when nobody believes in you. What's going on, dear friends? Thank you so much for tuning in for another great episode of Tom Talk Success, where we bring you a lot of different entrepreneurs and real estate people and just people that want to level up and people that have done a lot of great stuff in their life. And today I have a true pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine, Carlos Rosso. And Carlos did a lot of stuff in the real estate. Is one of the top developers in the country, in the South Florida, in Miami market. Has started his way out in the related group and then kind of venture out and did his own stuff. Carlos, thank you so much for tuning in and coming on today. How's your day going?
The day is going great. Thank you very much, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here and happy to share with your audience my experience.
Thank you so much, man. So I guess let's just jump right in it. What would you say, Carlos, if you're looking back at your life, what would you say it's like your biggest success until today, like biggest hit?
I think my biggest success is not to give up. You know, I always relate to the things that I did when I was young, and I used to love to run long distance. And I think of life in a similar way. You know, I think life is a marathon. It's not a 100-meter dash race, and you have to be persistent, and you have to be constant, and you have to be able to live with this constant pressure that is real estate, you know?
Why real estate, man? What's kind of brought you in real estate?
I come from a family of architects. Both my parents were architects. They also were developers. You know, they built stuff. My grandfather was an engineer. He also built buildings. So I guess I always saw them. You know, they have always been my inspiration and a great example, and I saw how they live their lives. And, you know, parents are something that you look up to and you try to emulate. So I guess my initial influence was my family. Obviously, when I studied architecture in Argentina, and then I spent 10 years working for a contracting company. And I realized that at the end of the day, you know, as an architect or even as a contractor, you don't make the decisions. You know, the decisions are made by the owner of the building. And I always said, you know, those are the guys who have the best life. And I always want to be the guy making those decisions and you know, being in charge and being at the helm of the project. So I completed my years of architecture. I worked during my college years, you know, with an architect in an office. And then I left to Europe and I did a scholarship where I ended up working 10 years in the Middle East in construction. And then I came back to the US and I went to MIT. I did a rehab program after being 10 years in the Middle East. You know, I studied finance and I did a master's in real estate in MIT. And then I started working basically for a company in Boca and then for the related group where I spent 20 years, you know, working and learning a lot from George Perez and the fantastic group of guys that work at Related and still are my friends. So, and then I decided to open my own company. So I've been very lucky, you know, I think we have all been very lucky to be in such a precise moment in a city like Miami.
What do you think developers are doing good and doing bad? Like, what do you think, if you're looking at developers and their career, what would you say, looking back at your career, you will do differently?
You know, it's difficult to say because it's like trying to look, you know, back with Monday's newspaper. You know, it's like very, very difficult to say. Obviously, I spend a lot of time in the Middle East. Maybe I should have come a little bit earlier to the US and started a little bit earlier. But, the experiences that I got there and traveling, the fact that I was able to travel a lot, around the world as an expat, I think that's something that, counterbalances the career side of things. At the end of the day, I did what I wanted. I got married, have a beautiful family, which I think it's my biggest achievement, better than work. And we are here in Miami, and we are all super happy. And we came at a very, very special time of Miami,
Well, first of all, congrats on that. It's, when somebody is having a family and he feels like he's accomplishing something, to me, I feel like that's the biggest accomplishment. So I'm with you on that. Carlos, I want to ask you, what do you think a lot of developers or, let's say there is a young developer out there. He wants to start in the business and he wants to make good money. Is it a good place to make fast money? Does it take a lot of time? What is your take on that?
Again, remember what I told you at the beginning. Life is a marathon. So, I think you need to really do what you like. If you really have to look yourself in the mirror and look at what you like. And if you're into real estate, yes, you can make money fast. Maybe you get lucky and stuff like that. But I always recommend people learn from the best. Try to work for a company for a couple of years. That's going to give you the structure that you need to build these projects. You cannot go there, and start projects of this scale without having the basic structure. You need to understand how the projects get entitled, how the negotiations happen when you purchase a piece of land, how do you talk to lenders, who are the lenders, who are the attorneys. So I think particularly in real estate, the deals are big. You're talking millions of dollars. So I think it's very good to start, working for a company in development or getting your broker's license, and starting to learn the lingo, the language of the profession. This is a profession, so we're all professionals. We're all doing it to make money, but at the same time, we are doing it within the confines of our métier. Real estate is the biggest asset class in the world.
Yeah.
If you take all the real estate in the world and you put a value to it, it's much bigger than all the gold, than all the petrol, than all the gas,
Trillions
and all the
of
oil.
dollars.
So you're entering into a field where there is a lot of people already in. It's like not that you're like inventing code for an application and you're the only guy who does that. There's a lot of people and they're competing, and it's all relationship based. You need to know the lenders, you need to know the attorneys, you need to know the people in the city. So I always say, at least for me, it works. Maybe some other people that are more entrepreneurial just jump in and start doing it. From my personal experience, my years at Related were great. I really learned. I applied everything that I had learned as an architect, as a builder, and then all the stuff that I learned at MIT. I went to a company that is the best company in South Florida, and I could apply it, and I could work hand in hand, with great minds, the Matt Allens of this world, all the guys that you don't hear a lot from Related, but are the guys who are there crunching the numbers and working hard and making sure that the companies work.
How important it is, Carlos, networking in this game? So I'm just trying to, one of the things that I'm trying to help a lot of my audience is networking and telling them the importance of it. Like just how me and you met at an event, and now we have a conversation. You know me, I know you. I could potentially introduce you to some people. You can do the same. How important it is with that for you, and how would you tell the audience to network? Like, what are some of your networking tips?
It's very important, Again, I think networking is very important, but in my particular case, and I tell that to my kids, I tell them the most important thing is you arrive first at the office and you leave last. You put the hours, and people are going to, particularly when you're young, people are going to recognize that you're a guy that is willing to learn, that you're a guy that is willing to listen, and that you're a guy that is willing to sweat it, to put the hours. And people, see that, and then they help you. They help you. Life is there's a natural order. We all get older, so we all need somebody to do our job in a couple of years. So you need to have the patience, and you need to have the constancy, to be able to every day go there, be the first, live last, and put the hours and put the effort.
Love it. What do you think about the young generation today? So obviously you mentioned you have kids. Why do you think we want it faster? Like, I had this conversation the other day, and I mentioned to my friend, like, I don't know what it is about us, about our age, that, we want the Ferraris, the jets, the nice stuff, but we don't want to wait. Like, we want it in 2-3 years. I don't know. Maybe your kids are the same.
My kids have never asked me for a Ferrari or for a jet. So if they ask me for a Ferrari or for a jet, I tell them, hey, go and work for it. I think the problem with your generation is that you're exposed to a lot more information that we were exposed. The phone, and social media makes you believe that getting that Ferrari or that getting that jet is easy, and it makes you believe that is an objective in life. I don't think it's an objective in life. I don't have a Ferrari and I don't have a jet.
You saying that this is not anywhere from your goals, like nothing.
No.
Never.
No. I've never. Wow. I never thought that I was doing this to get a better car or to get a bigger house or to get a plane. I really love what I do. I think, and I tell you the truth, I am doing it to have more time off, to have more time with my family. Money is just a vehicle to allow you to live a calmer life, to travel more, to do more trips, to enjoy more experiences. I'm not just doing it for the thrill of being able to arrive with a Ferrari at the hotel and everybody say, oh, look at the guy, how successful he is. No, not at all. No, zero.
And it's so interesting because, in your industry and development, obviously there's a lot of other developers that, will come with the Rolls Royces and stuff like that. How do you think it's that important? Like when you go to those events to show people that you also like have some money and have I'm just trying to figure it out. I mean, for the audience too, like, because I'm sure sometimes they're debating themselves, like, do I need that? Do I not?
I think I don't know. I've been, again, I'm at the stage of my life that I want more time. I don't want more stuff. I want less stuff, but I want more time, And that's, I actually was listening to another podcast this morning, just randomly, and a guy said, talking about why the Jewish people are so successful.
By the way, you're Jewish?
No, I'm not Jewish. Oh. But I'm from Genoa. My parents are from Genoa. They call them the Jews of Italy. So,
wow.
But why the Jews in general are so successful, and particularly successful in real estate? And one of the things that they say is that they are thinking of generational wealth. They're thinking of wealth that is going to last 2 generations, 3 generations. They're not thinking about stuff. They don't want stuff. They want assets. They want things that are going to last longer. Wow. I once had a meeting with a big New York Jewish real estate developer, and the guy told me, one of the biggest things, never sell. Never sell. Refinance, but never sell, And it stuck with me because we are, obviously when you're young and you need to generate wealth, you need to sell, you need to trade things, But then at a certain stage, when you already have what you need, you really don't need to be in the rush to get another $1 million. Another $1 million to me, it's not going to change who I am.
Wow.
The next $1 million doesn't change me. So I'm very lucky that I'm also, married to a grounded woman, my wife, who is like an anchor and who is somebody that has all her bearings in the right place.
Wow.
I I think that's more important than a real estate deal. So if you ask me, for the young kids, I say find a good wife.
How important it is to have a good relationship. So, if we talk about it, and, how old is your kids right now?
My kids are 22, 20, 18, and 16,
so
more or less.
perfect age, right?
Yeah.
So let's even talk about your son who is 22. What would you tell him in terms of relationship? Would you want him to be focused on work, developing himself, getting successful first and then find a girl, or find the girl first before you are big? Because I have this debate sometimes, and
I think it's life. You're experiencing life, and I tell him, the most important thing, hey, treat everybody like you want to be treated. That's the most important thing, Second thing, again, wake up early, be the first one, and leave last. Put your, use all the things that we've given you to the maximum. All the qualities that we gave you through education, through family, use them to the max level. Don't be lazy about yourself, because one day you're going to regret it. Put the effort. If you put the effort and people see that you're putting the effort, good things will happen to you. It may take longer, it may take faster. Remember, I did my master's degree at 33 years old, and my kid is 22 and he's already saying, well, I finished university and maybe I'm going to go and do a master's degree. And I say, I think you need to work first, work for a couple of years, get some real experience, get the hours, work the 12 hours per day that analysts work, or, that young assistant project managers do, and then go and study again. So I think life is a constant evolution, but you need to mature, and I would definitely not tell him, hey, if you don't get a Ferrari, if you don't get it, no. I said, no, forget all that, forget all that. And meet as many people and as many girls and have as many relationships, always from with the focus of treating them well, the same way that you want to be treated,
I love that. Carlos, so when you started your career, you mentioned to me that you had a long story, right? Was it easy for you? Was it not easy? How would you summarize what you have done until today?
It is what it is. Again, it's the personal story of each one. When you reach at this age of 60, I think you are thankful. I am very thankful from what I got. I never think, could I done better, or it is what it is, and I think the fact again that I landed in Miami, a city that when I left MIT, and I started working here in Miami, my friends in Argentina said, "Why are you in Miami? Miami is like tacky." Miami in the 2000s was like a very tacky place. People didn't feel that, hey, I'm going to Miami. I remember, telling my friends from high school in Argentina, hey, I'm going to go and work in Miami. And they were like, hey, why didn't you get a job in New York or in Boston? You went to MIT, you should have stayed there. And I always had this impression that Miami had such a big connection to Latin America. And I always saw myself as a real, as an Argentinian guy. I had a big connection with Argentina. My wife's from Argentina. I'm very close to my parents, to my brother, to my sisters, and my wife is also very close to her family. So those were our roots. So the ideal situation was living in Miami. In Miami, we can continue doing business in Spanish.
There's a big Spanish community.
Yeah,
here.
we have a direct flight. We take the flight at 11 o'clock, and at 7 o'clock we are in the same time zone, so we can sleep in the plane. Again, those things, recognizing who you are with the good and the bad. We are not perfect, and we obviously make a lot of mistakes, and but I think that I knew very fast that I didn't want to. I remember when I finished at MIT, I started working in Boston, And the first time I went to the city of Boston with a set of plans, to get a permit for the person that I was working for, I was there in the queue, and I was like, I don't know, 10 people ahead of me, and I was listening to the conversations that they had with the person on the front desk. Hey, how are you doing? Where did you park the car? Did you see the Red Sox yesterday, what they did and what they not did and stuff like that? Wow. You see the Patriots and stuff like that? I'm thinking, I don't know anything of, the culture or the environment of Boston. This is a place that is not for me, and I very soon realized that, as an immigrant, as you're an immigrant, as I'm an immigrant, arriving in a place where everything is already formed and all the structures are already there, social structures, it was going to be very difficult to progress.
Wow.
Miami is a place where, everything is new.
Yeah.
And there is, and particularly for us, for the Latin community, it's a very easy place to make friends, to relate even to the weather of Miami, So I think this is a great city. It's an amazing city.
I think it's the best city in the world right
Yes.
now. Carlos, why do you think there's a lot of developers that are also do not have big successful or do not have big
I don't
access
know,
to good projects?
I don't know. My colleagues, the colleagues that I've had that are in development have been, very successful in general. Guys that went with me to MIT and then came to Miami, are working in companies. Not everybody maybe has had the chance to jump the company and start their own company. But I think in general, Miami is a place where if you have the will and you have the connections that maybe are through family or, in my case, having worked in Related and through Related met, the architects, met the attorneys, the lenders, the contractors, the interior designers, the brokers, and create those relationships, I think, it's a great place to start. It's a difficult city in the sense that,
There's a lot of big ones.
Yeah,
right?
and also that the density for a young developer, if you were a developer in Argentina or I don't know in your country, but the zoning and the size of the buildings are smaller. They're more urban projects, so you can partner up with 2 friends or 3 friends and maybe do a building with 12 apartments or 10 apartments or 6 apartments. In Miami, it's very difficult to find that scale, because the cost of land is too expensive. The zonings are for 150 units an acre, 500 units an acre.
Like big,
so they're
big projects.
Big, these projects are big. So it's true that it's difficult to find those opportunities as a young 25, 30-year-old developers. That's why I say, like, in Miami, I think the best solution for the younger kids is to work for a company for a couple of years. A, you save some money and you have some money in the bank the day that you want to start your company. B, you create your portfolio and your Rolodex of relationships that you're going to use. It's very difficult for you to start alone here and know who the best zoning attorney is, who the best loan document attorney is. So when you work for a big company, they work with these big firms.
So
and
you
if you
make
develop a relationship with them, they will want to help you when you start on your own. They become friends.
Do you believe the sentence that say your net worth is your network? Have you heard about that
Your
sentence
net
before?
worth is your
Network.
network. Definitely, yeah, it's very important. This is a very, very relationship-based business.
Why real estate for a long time is a people business? I mean, a lot of people, I fear a lot of people that saying, oh, I can develop myself, or I don't need partners, or I don't need, I'm just telling all of them, look, if you want to be in real estate, you better know some people, because without people, you are nothing.
This is a people business. It's like I always compare this business with a dentist. The dentist is alone in his office. They'll open your mouth. He takes the tooth out and sayonara, baby, that's it. And in real estate, if you want to build a building, you need zoning attorney, contract attorney, environmental engineers, architects, interior designers, contractors, lenders.
Wow.
You know, you need people.
Yeah.
Imagine the dentist does all his work on his own. You know, you need people to do it. You cannot do it alone.
So
it's a business with people.
Development, Carlos, if we talk about development, essentially developer is, just for the audience to understand more, is really the guy or the company that put everything together, right? So when they drive by, they see Porsche design or, you know, SLS. The developer is the one that got all of the people that needed, the architect, the designer, the this and that, all together. And then how would you describe to the audience, I just want them to get more insight, how does the developer makes money from all of that?
Well, the developer is, you know, somebody told me yesterday, you're the visionary. It's like, I like that word, you know. I like it. I think it's a little bit too much. But, you know, the reality is that you have to have a vision. You have to drive through a site and say, I think I can build this or that here. And then you hire an architect to confirm that what you were thinking, you know, was right. Then you go and you negotiate that site with the owner of the site. You know, then you are the guy, you are the director of the orchestra, of this team of professionals, architects, engineers, stuff like that, and you need to be able to get to the final goal, which is to make money.
So all of the developers, they are so smart. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, developers are very knowledgeable in each of those sections, or they just, like, you know what I mean?
You need to know a little bit of everything. You're a generalist, you know, you're a generalist with a vision. So you're I'm not an expert in contract law, so I hired a good attorney. I don't know how to build a building, you know, I know how to, but I don't know how to, you know, put the rebar and tie the rebar together and then order the concrete. I don't know what concrete it is, so I hire an engineer that says what concrete it is, how much rebar, and then there's a GC that knows how to put it all together.
How hard it is for developers to trust, like, so I'm just like, let's say saying you start in a development, you want to build this building, and now you need to hire all those people, lawyers, you know, architects, designers. Like, I'm just trying to figure it out, especially as a new developer or somebody even that's been in the industry for a while, like how much trust you need to put in those people, right? Like,
yes, I think
talk
that's,
to us about that.
Nah, I think that's the experience that working for a company like you know, Related, or working with Gil Desser, or working with I don't know, Isaac Toledano, you know, or working with gives you, you know. You're jumping into a company where they already have those relationships with those guys. They have proven that they can build the buildings. So you go there and you learn, you know, and you try to listen, and then you develop a relationship with those professionals the day that you want to start on your own. They're not only the professionals with whom you worked before when you were in a big company, they're also your friends, and they're also your advisors.
Yep.
Maybe they tell you, you know what, your project is too small for me, but I recommend you this other guy. You know, so I think that's the part of the business that requires a little bit of social skills. And if people like you, this is a people business, they need to like you, you know?
Before anything, right?
Like
Before
you,
anything.
you know? But fortunately, it involves sales. It involves, you know, hire people that want to be around you. And I say, you know, people that want to be around you because you have a Ferrari and you have a jet are different than people that want to be around you because they like you.
Yeah,
you know.
I agree with
so be careful with thinking that because you have a Ferrari and a jet and you arrive to an event all dressed up, people are going to like you. You know, I am very suspicious of that likeness. You know.
I see. So if you would like to tip to the audience, so being experiment, very important, but also be somebody that they can trust and like.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask you, so we talked about, you know, being with the right people. if you out there somebody that nobody knows you, right? And,
Yes.
and you are good at what you're doing, but nobody knows you. And it's like, I don't know, maybe you had experienced that before or maybe you know people that are shy or don't really know how to connect with people. For example, even at the event that me and you met, right? If
Yes.
I would not came to you, we will never do this, and who knows what we will never do, right?
Yes.
So how important it is to get out of your comfortable zone and approach people that are much, much bigger than you and not being afraid.
It's very important, Remember, we all started our careers. You approach me and we are talking. I sent an email to George Perez when I was in MIT school and he received me.
Wow.
So it's the same type of, you have to be able to make that first move. By the way, in business, you have to be able to take that risk. That's a
and
risk.
Be comfortable, right?
Yeah,
with
and
the
say like, hey,
objection.
and again, not be afraid. The worst that can happen is that the guy doesn't answer, or the worst that can happen is that he sends you to talk with someone else. And those are the relationships that you develop. You have to be confident. You cannot be a developer and not have a level of confidence in what you do, Again, we are extremely, we try to project a sense of security, when we sell. Selling is about being able to convince you to, in the case that we do condominiums, is being able to convince you that you give me money.
Yeah,
I
mean, pretty much. I mean, yeah.
So, and at the same time, we are worried all the time. We are people that worry all the time. At night, what is going to happen with this, with that, the lender, the contractor,
So I want to ask you, Carlos, so you're in Miami, right? Tons of big developers, tons of very successful people. And you mentioned about, not sleeping at night good and having that stress. Are you in your career still today looking at maybe the biggest developer here in Miami and saying to yourself like, wow, I need to be like him, or I need to be like him, or I need to do that, and always this consistent of doing more? Or are you like, you know what, I've done my thing and I'm good with that?
No, I
because I agree with that. A lot of people are at night,
I think look, I left Related after working 23 years, And I remember my wife told me, don't worry, everything is fine, you're going to be fine. Take it easy, relax, 6 months. And I said, okay, so I'll relax, So in the mornings, I used to wear my bathrobe, sit in the living room, open my iPad, and read the news,
like the wife said.
And read the whole newspaper, they were from the beginning till the end. And at the same time, my wife was like zooming from one side to the other of the house, taking my first kids to school, then coming back, taking the other ones to the second school, and then coming back, and then changing and going to play tennis, and then coming back, and then going to have lunch with her friends, and then coming back. And I was there with my iPad and stuff like that. And after 3 months, she told me, hey, what are you doing? I said, like, you told me to relax. I'm here relaxing. Yeah, but not that much, not
following
that much,
orders.
So find something to do,
Yeah.
I don't know, go and teach in the university, be part of a board, you're still young, And I said, like, you know what? I better find something to do. And I had people calling me from the time that I was working at Related. Hey, don't you want to do something together and stuff like that? And at the end of the day, I started working again. And I'm basically doing it also for my kids, I just, A, want them to see that I'm still working, B, trying to help them out eventually, in their path to their careers. So I continue fostering relationships, connections for them, and opening doors wherever I can to try to help them, But I also think, that work gives you a meaning in life. I really feel proud of the standard that we're doing right now in Midtown and of Midtown Park. Those are jobs that I think are going to be very fulfilling for me personally. I'm going to feel very proud to drive with my friends and with my kids and tell them, you know what, I built this building with partners and with a contractor and with a team of people. We did this, And they are part of that also, because I tell them, Each time that I interrupt carpool to pass through a building and look at, if the GC has put the windows or hasn't put the windows, I'm taking time away from you, but I'm giving you time. I'm giving you stuff. You're learning a trade and you're learning effort.
Wow.
The effort is the biggest part of it. So again, I come back to that image. I am not like a guy that believes in the Ferrari or the jet as
You're
an
like,
objective.
I see you like super different vibe than that. Like
completely
super,
down to earth.
Wow.
Like an
which I
effort.
love. I love people like that.
And effort is number one for me. And this goes back to what I was telling you when I was a kid that I used to run. And I used to run, and I used to run long distance, and I never wanted to give up.
Wow.
And I always wanted to continue, doing better and pushing myself. Again, I think it's different personalities, different people. I'm sure that, and then at the same time, you have to feel comfortable in your own skin. You're not going to be liked by everybody.
I agree with that. That's big. And actually, question to that: how important it is, Carlos, even when you have success and you have, let's say, not even you, but somebody else have a lot of money, super successful, how important it is to be, like you mentioned, down to earth and still respect that young guy that comes to you, or not have him feel like you are like some god or something. Because in especially in real estate, there is a lot of people like that.
Yeah, there are people like that, but again, I don't pay attention to those people. They're not people that I'm like. The people that I'm around are like grounded and minded in the same way, and they understand effort, and the rest is fluff. It's like foam. It's like foam. It's not solid.
It's
see.
Not, it's not real.
Yeah, I like solid guys. I'm really not wasting time with people that are, pretentious or trying to sell you something that I don't think it's important to me.
So when you were young, what would you say? So we mentioned about the challenges that you had. What would you say? Let's say if you're looking back at your life, is there something you have done differently, or you live with no regret?
I live with no regrets. I proposed to my wife.
Hopefully you're not regretting that.
No,
Right?
no. But what I'm telling you, I proposed to her, and then she rejected me, and she said no for a couple of years, and then we met again, and then we got married.
Wow.
And again, I think, again, those things, when you think about it, we were maybe too young, too immature back then, and then life happened, and we all had our different experiences, other boyfriends, other girlfriends, So again, when you translate all that to your life, I'm very content. I'm very happy. Look, I just came back from the birthday party of my parents, 95 and 90.
Wow.
So
God bless.
Yeah. I have great sisters. I'm like very happy, very content, and
I love it about you,
and
Carlos.
very good friends and very good colleagues in real estate. That are always a support. People that you can pick up the phone and tell them, hey, what I'm thinking about this. What do you think? What do you not think? So I'm like very, very content, very happy, and we are all healthy.
God bless.
And I think I wish I could have come a little bit earlier to Miami. That's my only regret. But again, at the same time, I came at the right moment. I started working in 2002 in Miami, and then I was very lucky also to see 2008 firsthand. I was very lucky to see what happens when companies take too much debt or projects take too much debt, which was basically what happened in 2008.
Wow.
And then what happens when the banks decide not to continue funding, and what happens when you allow people to flip 3 times the condos before you close. And I always remember, that last scene, the scene when we were discussing the reworking of a loan in Brickell, and the bank didn't agree to our plan, and we went with 2 buckets with 1,500 keys and turned all the keys back to the bank.
Wow.
So those images, that are a little bit like Hollywood type images, stuck with me, and I connect that to what, I learned at MIT, whether is that good or that is that bad.
Do you feel, Carlos, that you mentioned a couple of times that you went to MIT? Do you feel it's important what do you think about education?
I think it's very important. It's a filter.
Even education of today was like.
I think it's very important. It sets a precedent. I don't want to say it's like branding, but in a sense, particularly for companies, for big companies, if you went to one of those reputable universities, this is like a little stamp of approval.
It's a stamp, but what's funny? Even Isaac mentioned that he didn't go to school, but he wants his kids to go to school. And so sometimes I find it so interesting that the people that have the most success actually didn't go to school, but they want their kids, employees, whatever, to go to the best schools.
Yeah, and again, it's also fine. Again, it was fine for me. For me, remember, I was an architect from Argentina. I had went to study to work in Europe. Then I went to the Middle East, and I came back and I studied at MIT. So MIT was like a little bit like a fresh coat of paint on my resume,
Wow.
And it's a great introduction to the companies here in the US. So if as an immigrant, remember, this is not an American. At that time, I was an immigrant coming to the United States. So I think passing through a university here, and enjoying it and making relationships there also.
So you still have people that you met there? Wow.
Yeah. So it's great. It's great for networking. There are still a lot of MIT guys that are here, of other years that also opened doors when I came to Miami.
So you saw it as like a positive thing?
Super positive, super positive. I would spend every day $1 in education before buying a Ferrari. It's your brains. Remember, we work with this. We don't work with our hands.
Yeah, I
We
agree.
are not soccer players. We don't work with our feet. We work with our brain. So anything that you can do to feed your brain is
Do
good.
it.
In my case, I liked education. I know that right now, particularly as part of this new generation of people, that think that wealth can be done so fast, education is a little bit like left aside, particularly when you see, and then depends also on the industry, See a Mark Zuckerberg, that left Harvard and then opened Facebook, and again, it's fine for him. I'm very happy that I finished my years in Boston, and again, it's what moves your needle.
What do you think, Carlos, if you were to think one thing that you will want the audience to hear, what was the best tip you can give them?
To never give up, never give up for the things that you really want.
Even when nobody believes you, Carlos, nobody believes in you, nobody see the vision that you see. Like a lot of people, a lot of times in life, entrepreneurs especially dealing with they have this vision, they have this goal, but literally nobody's believing in them, and they're sitting there, they're trying to get it work. There is no results in the beginning, and nobody believes in them. How would you still keep going?
I think you have to always have friends that you can share what's going through you, and tell them, hey, I'm doing this pitch and it doesn't work. What do you think? Where am I missing the point? Because we are not perfect. Sometimes, you think, oh, people don't understand me or people misunderstand me and stuff like that. Maybe somebody changes the vision, says, well, maybe you said that if you say it in a different tone, or maybe the way you present yourself, or maybe look at the numbers, the numbers are not correct. You always have to bounce your ideas with someone else.
Wow. Carlos, thank you so much for coming on today.
We're finishing. Let's continue.
And unfortunately, the time is running. But man, what a pleasure to have you. Hearing your story, coming as an immigrant, and having massive success. That's what I want to share with the audience. So thanks again for coming. And so guys, make sure if you like this episode, please subscribe, share it, write in the comment who should I be interviewing next. And Carlos, how can people find you? So you mentioned you have an Instagram, right?
I have an Instagram, then Rosso Development is the website, and then the projects that we are doing, the Standard Midtown has its own website, and there's a phone number there, and the Midtown Park also has, its own website and has a phone number there. We're going to have the first social club in Midtown with 12 paddle courts in the middle of Midtown.
They have to come to check it out.
So all the young kids, can come, play, and mingle, and we're going to have our own real estate events there. Hopefully we can do something like this. This is a very cool idea to have like a little podcast studio there for people to come and show and present.
Love it.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, absolutely. It was a true pleasure bringing you. And guys, if you want to listen to this episode, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Go on Tom Grobman on Instagram, and then Tom Talks Success on Instagram as well. And all of the reels, everything will be there. So I'll see you guys on the next episode.